administrators. We had a 3-day workshop with Dr. Michael Reddick, and he shared many different scheduling options with us. So the high school team broke off into their committee, and then the middle school team broke off in theirs because we realized how completely different our goals would be. So the process began. We began with our goals. Collectively, the group decided that the goals, I will have to say before we even start that it was difficult. It was a difficult process because when you have a very good program and the job is to make a very good program better, it's kind of uncomfortable for some people looking at, well, we're already doing a really good job. Well, that's right. We are already doing a very good job. However, our task is to take a look and see what we're doing and see if we can do it even better. So these were the goals. To increase instructional time in the core, and that goal came about because what we saw was students at the elementary level and the high school level had more core time than the middle level. They kind of dropped that. And I tried to explore what happened in the past and why we ended up with the schedule that we did have, and it's a middle school schedule, and middle school is for exploration. And for those reasons, those numbers were just minutes were slightly lower, so we thought, well, let's see if we can increase the instructional time. We also looked to incorporate music into the daily schedule, trying to figure out ways to provide students with their general music, the band, orchestra, and chorus, and maybe not use that time in 11th period, which is used for a number of other things. The next goal was to build an intervention extension time similar to the high school, trying to find a common time where we can, and this is really based on the comprehensive plan goals for the district, is to provide more enrichment for our high achieving students. That was one of the goals of the comprehensive plan, and then to provide interventions for students who still struggle. The elimination of inefficiencies and allocating time more efficiently really had to do with 11th period. There was conversation about, well, there's so many different things that go on in 11th period. Is there a way to make that more efficient for students? And then we thought, well, let's look at, are there any other options? We're talking about 21st century learning. Is there anything else that we can provide more choice for our students? Because really middle schoolers should be exploring. And then the final goal for our team was to provide equity for 6th grade team, because the 6th grade runs more on an elementary type schedule. It's different from the 7th and 8th, which really runs on common planning time with teachers, and 6th grade teachers didn't have that, so that was one of the goals. How can we provide that? Because we know that when teachers meet in teams and they're speaking about students, we meet the needs of students better. So they were the goals that we set out. We also broke up into teams. We had our core team, the encore team, an intervention enrichment team, and the public relations group. We never really got started on that because Chris and I, Mr. Temchatin and I, really kind of worked with each group, so we would just keep circulating with those groups. And we had a wide representation. We had administrators and parents. Thank you, Mrs. Cullen. We had a guidance counselor, IST, core teachers, encore teachers, special ed teachers, gifted teachers. We had an initial team that went to visit schools, and then we expanded our team once we did that. So you'll see that timeline in progress. We met a lot. We started in September. We created the goals. We visited Colonial School District. We visited Lower Merion. We visited Hatboro as well. We had conversations with Central Bucks. So we kind of got an idea what are our other local school districts doing. So then what we did was we would have committee team meetings with the middle school, and then the two co-chairs, the high school and the middle school, we would meet together, and then we would talk about our progress. And it kind of went back and forth like that. So mostly it was our group meeting, but we tried to stay in tandem with high school, but eventually didn't stay that way. We tried to do similar things. We did not do Google Docs, but we did do the matrix, and we did other similar things. So our last meeting was on June 2nd, and we had a lot of dialogue. And as Gina, Miss DeBona said, we weren't reaching total consensus, but what we kept doing is go back to our goals. What were our goals? Are we able to meet all of our goals? And which schedule would we be able to meet all of our goals? But as Mr. Temchatin will show you later, when you make certain decisions, there are a lot of other factors and repercussions with each one. So we went back and forth. And let me just back up quickly because I'm going to have Joan talk about that. We did do a survey because we kind of got stuck on 11th period. Our goal was to take 11th period. Do we need 11th period? Is that essential? Is that effective? If not, we could take the minutes from 11th period and add them into the other courses. That stirred emotion, is what I'll call it. People are very passionate about 11th period. So collectively, we said, we can't move any further until we know how the community feels about 11th period, all the teachers, and we want to know what the students think about 11th period. So at that point, we stopped and said, we're going to create a survey, and Mrs. Kulesza is going to review that survey so that we would find out, how does everybody feel about that? What does the community really want and why? And from that point, after Joan explains all that, we were able to come back again as a team and say, we have some decisions here. We have more information than we had before. Based on this new information, we had everybody take a look at those options, and the committee made a decision. What I asked the board is if we didn't publicly make that recommendation tonight, because all through the process, and it was a very good process, I will have to say, we said that we wouldn't make a final recommendation until we had the opportunity to talk to all staff. Now, staff has seen this, and Mr. Temchatin and I are meeting with them on the 16th, and we're going to give them that opportunity to ask any questions. We want to honor the processes, which is why we're asking for your patience with that. But we will be ready to make a recommendation. So with that, I'll let Mrs. Kulesza come up and describe the survey.
Good evening. So as Dr. Scheid said, we wanted to make sure before we moved forward that we got a wider range of feedback regarding 11th period, because the members of the committee themselves were kind of split on how 11th period should be handled. So we decided to survey parents of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students themselves, all middle school teachers, as well as we wanted feedback from our current 9th graders who had been in middle school and now had almost a full year of high school under their belt, so that they could look back and reflect on the value of 11th period to them. So those were our 4 groups that we surveyed. The questions were relatively brief, and they kind of paralleled each other, particularly the student surveys and the parent surveys, and the teacher surveys were very similar, but they did have some questions that were specific to educators. So first of all, the response that we got was incredible. The responses came in actually within minutes of the survey going live, and it really was remarkable how quickly people were responding, which was another indication of the passion of their feelings regarding 11th period. So with the teacher survey, we had 96 responses, and we were able to separate them based on grade level and whether they were a core teacher, core subject teacher, or a special area teacher or a special education teacher. So the top graph represents, or the top chart represents, the breakout of percentage. And in looking at the results, we didn't really see any differences between grade level or core subject. There was no pattern that related to what they taught, although the special area teachers were able to provide specific information about how they utilize 11th period, as well as special education teachers were using it as an intervention period. We asked the teachers about how many students they saw each week during 11th period, and you can see the breakdown of those responses. So we had roughly about half of the teachers said that they met with 5 or fewer students per week, and the other half said they met with between 6 and 10 students per week. We asked the teachers also, on a scale of 1 to 10, how useful they felt 11th period was for their curriculum subject area, with 10 being extremely useful and 1 being not useful at all. So you can kind of see that the majority of teachers, by far the majority of teachers, almost 70% said they found it was at least a 7. And we had close to 50% rating it as high as 9 to 10. We then wanted to know, because one of the questions that we were looking at was how efficient 11 period is. And it was the same scale, and again, we kind of saw the same results, although I think there was a little more variety in the responses for efficiency. So you can see that they didn't feel as strongly in the efficiency, with only about 28% ranking at 9 to 10 compared with 48% ranking the usefulness of 11th period in general. Then we wanted to look at, well, if we were going to make changes to 11th period, what's the minimum number of 11 periods per week that you feel would be necessary? And it seemed like 3 was the magic number. 3 and below garnered the most number of respondents, with about a quarter of the teachers, a little less than a quarter of the teachers saying they needed all 5 days. Then what we did is we had an open-ended question where we asked teachers, if you could change anything in 11th period, what, if any, changes would you make? And only 1 out of those 96 people said they wanted to just eliminate it. 32 were fine with just the way it was, but there were 53 teachers who made some suggestions in how that could be changed. To give you an idea of some of the changes they suggested was possibly shortening the periods, giving it more structure, more consistency in how teachers supervised it, and so on. But there weren't any major dramatic changes that they wanted to make. We received almost 1,400 responses from students, and quite a number of 9th graders, so I think we got a very significant response. And we kind of asked the same questions to all students, whether they were middle school or high school, but we asked the high school students to kind of reflect on back to when they were in middle school. There was no question at all that the majority of students favored keeping 11th period, and their main reasons were because they had such full lives outside of school that 11th period really helped them to get homework done, meet with a teacher if they needed to do makeup work or they needed assistance. But there was no question that from the student perspective, they felt 11th period was extremely valuable. Parents, we had close to 540 parents respond to this, which I think is a terrific response. And we asked them the same kind of questions. On average, how much of your child's homework was completed during 11th period? And almost 60% said that most, if not all of it, was completed during 11th period. We asked them how much time do your students spend at home doing homework, and it was, by far the vast majority was under 2 hours. And when we asked them the same open-ended response, how they would like to see 11th period utilized, I think it was overwhelming that parents were saying without 11th period, there would be so much additional stress added to their lives because the kids are quite busy after school. And parents are quite busy after school. And even if they weren't busy after school, the parents appreciated the fact that they were able to get a lot of their homework done during 11th period so that they could have more family time. So we found the 11th period survey results very eye-opening. And I think to sum it up, student surveys, parent surveys were very consistent in their feelings on 11th period. And the biggest variance we found was amongst the teachers.
So then some of the options we put on the table once we realized the value of 11th period and value in our families' lives to the 11th period is just, one, what's that first option? And we went into every meeting we had right from the beginning that we said, we don't have to change. Like that's always has to be a precursor. We're not going to put our head down and say we'll change no matter what. So that was option A. So that was option A, is that we stick with our 44-minute periods, our core structure the way it is, on-core structure, and 11th period. Yep. We put on the table option B. Now option B was heavily dependent upon the survey results and the value of 11th period, so it had no change to 11th period. 11th period now, just because we didn't put the existing schedule up there for those of you before us, 11th period now, we run a 44-minute period schedule, and then at 2:04, our 10th period is over, and students would do some announcements, dismissal, and then students are in 11th period, primarily by their homeroom, but also in music obligations. There's club periods throughout. They meet, their homerooms are by team, so they can meet with their team teachers, and the team teachers coordinate who they can go see at different times. So they're in 11th period essentially from 2:10 to 2:55, and with the announcements and transition of going to their lockers and so on in between there. So that's really the current structure in the shortest nutshell, but there's just a lot of different things that go on during 11th period. One of the key parts about 11th period is we say we wanted to explore putting music into the schedule. 11th period, all of our music groups meet during 11th period. The music, performance music, band, orchestra, and chorus all meet during 11th period. They also do lessons throughout the day, at least band and orchestra do, where they'll do pull-out lessons on a rotating schedule. And once every couple of weeks a student might be out of a class or a pull-out lesson, but that's an additional stress that students might have within their academic day. So to keep 11th period and leave music in the schedule are really those two big keys to any schedule we were going to look at, is what do we do with 11th and then where does music go? The equity of 6th grade team time we were able to address in option B. It's something that in the next slide we'll look at how we fit some pieces into those on-core schedules where it would allow for 6th grade teachers to meet daily about their team, with their team, about their team of students, as our 7th and 8th grade teachers do on the core team. We looked at option B. As we went through our schedules, one thing that we saw as a whole, aside from minutes, was that we have students choose their foreign language. Students who are eligible for foreign language is based on their reading level, but the majority of our students are choosing a foreign language in their 8th grade year. They're choosing their foreign language based on what they think about that foreign language. There's really no true exploratory language class. The students taking 6th grade exploring language connections, which really ties some of the Latin, it's a lot of Latin is what it really is, and they don't truly explore different languages, when then in 8th grade they're going to choose between Spanish, French, and German without any real exposure to it. So that's something we found as a whole that we should at least consider addressing if we were looking at a schedule change, minor or major. Option B would reduce wellness in 7th grade, but add 50% of that time back in 6th grade. And what I mean by that is wellness is our physical education and our wellness piece, which is more of like the traditional health piece, is all in one. That's 180 days in 7th grade. It's 90 days in 6th grade, 180 days in 7th grade, 90 days again in 8th grade in different formats. So we were looking at a 90-day course in 7th grade that would be consistent with 6th, 7th, and 8th in terms of the core wellness piece. And as I'll show you, we'll put some time back into 6th grade because the wellness teachers were very adamant that much of that health piece that they work on, the curriculum topics, would be so lost if we lost all that 7th grade. Family Consumer Science, Art, and Music become quarter classes in 6th grade, when currently they are half of a trimester. Currently they meet for a trimester 60 days, and they meet 3 days out of a 6-day cycle, so they're essentially 30 days. I could take a day or two depending on that trimester and how it lands. As far as staffing within option B, the major staffing piece would be just an additional world language teacher up to 2.0, and really that would come based on, we wouldn't be able to make that decision until we knew what the threshold was for students to take that world language course in 7th grade. We have in 8th grade, students need to demonstrate a level of proficiency in reading to take a language class. We would do the same thing in 7th grade, rather than have students taking an exploratory language when they most likely would not be able to take a foreign language in 8th grade. So the 6th grade schedule, what you'll see here is our traditional homeroom period, 44-minute periods throughout the day. As I said, we look at quarters. We shift some things around for the pieces. If we were going to provide that team time for sixth grade, we needed to make up 90 days within the sixth grade schedule. And where we get those 90 days from is a semester, 3 days out of 6 in a cycle, which will end up being 45 for wellness, and 15 days of instruction in addition in music, family, consumer science, and art. So we set up those rotations different rather than having the family, consumer science, art, and music on a trimester that meets 3 days out of a 6-day cycle, opposite health and PE. We move them into 2 quarters or a semester, 3 days out of a 6-day cycle for music, and the additional wellness would allow the wellness department to move some of that curriculum that they're so concerned about in 7th grade into that 6th grade. The rest of the schedule is essentially what it is now. Looking at our language arts, our text analysis course, social studies, math, and science meeting for 44 minutes per day, and the activity period, which is our 11th period, running from 2:10 to 2:55. Any questions on what's in 6th grade there?
So one of the goals was to increase core time, so this doesn't.
This does not address that goal. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was, so this time is the same in the core?
Yes. To increase time, we need to take it from somewhere, and to increase the core time, we would likely take it from 11th period, and once we take any time from 11th period, we then need to put music into the schedule to honor our music program in any way. So there's always a ripple effect to anything.
And then how does the time for the encore subjects, how does that change from what it is now to this proposal?
Just in 6th grade, family, consumer science, art, and music are gaining 15 instructional days.
You're getting 15?
Instructional days in 6th grade, yep.
Uh-huh.
And wellness is really losing 45 days between 7th and 6th.
Wait, but you just said just in 6th grade, so FCS, art, and music are gaining.
15 instructional days in 6th grade apiece.
And so where are they taking that from?
The way the trimesters work, the trimesters don't work quite perfectly efficiently. Like there'll be a trimester in one period of the 2 in which they take it in our building where they might not have a course because we just need to get 8 sections if we have a full load within our building. So where's the time coming from? It's coming from the, I'm sorry, I'm thinking more of the teacher schedule. The time is coming from the 90 days of Readers, Writers Workshop and hands-on equations. 45 of those days are now the 15 days a piece of family, consumer science, art, and music, and the other 45 of those days is that wellness going back into 6th grade.
So you're getting rid of Reader, Writer Workshop, and
those are non-graded courses that teachers have. That's considered an enrichment period in 6th grade, and that's something that came along when 6th grade was moved into the middle school, however many years ago that was. They're non-graded courses that are taught by the core teachers.
so it's just, so Reader, Writer Workshop is a course, and then what was the other one?
Hands-on equations.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And you don't see, nobody sees an issue with, I mean, isn't that actually kind of core time?
It is, but it's non-graded and not even listed as a course. It's really, teachers work with kids, they do great stuff with them, but that was not a major concern that was raised.
Is it possible to do some of that? Because based on the teacher survey, they said that 11th period, they need about 3 days. Is it possible to put some of that back into that 11th period time?
What we looked into with the 3 days, we looked into some rotations where we would have had 11th period 2 days out of 6 in a cycle rather than having them every day. But again, anytime you take anything from 11th period, we have to move music into it to honor our music program in any way. But you just mean to put those particular topics in there? I mean, that's something that we could discuss.
Because I'm just thinking then for the kid, it could be a choice, for kids that don't have music that maybe could benefit still from that. I don't know. My other question is with wellness being a, age-specific kind of a subject, is the curriculum that you're moving from 7th grade to 6th grade age appropriate?
It would require the wellness department to restructure the curriculum 6 through 8 so they could appropriately make everything land where it needed to in terms of the scope and sequence. So there would have to be a curriculum shifter. Not everything from 7th grade moves directly into 6th, but that's a conversation that they would have to have from a curriculum standpoint.
Okay.
And some of just, from the teacher survey, just to address that with 11th period, one thing that everybody kind of agreed is if 11th period stays as is, we should get together and talk about how can we make 11th period more efficient for those students that it's not completely efficient for. Because everything's so interconnected, I've spoken about this already with 7th grade, because really that difference in 7th grade, geography is the same 44 minutes, pre-algebra or algebra 1 is the same 44 minutes. When you look at the periods that change a little bit are the period 5-6 with text analysis and world language and STEM and health and PE. Health and PE would be its own block currently as a 180-day course that students take every day. By reducing that to the 90 days, it allows us to add the 90-day world language course that would be exploratory for students going to 8th grade. Currently, the STEM course that we have listed there, we have a computer course, computer ed course, but there's curriculum conversations taking place within the curriculum department about how to upgrade that computer curriculum and sort of mesh it and intertwine it with some of the, what we have considered tech ed now, but it's really STEM and engineering pieces that take place in our courses. So we would be looking at a curriculum revision for computers as well, even though the days wouldn't change. Okay.
In your survey, you noted that both students and parents liked the 11th period. It sounded like primarily because of the homework issue. Was there a question about whether that was essentially a study hall for those students so they could get homework done? Or was it a period when they actually sought assistance from teachers on things that they didn't understand about their homework?
It happens, sorry. That all takes place in 11th period. I think in a perfect world, we could put Fitbits on every kid and do a time study where we buzzed them at certain times of the day randomly, and they could, what are you doing now? And they could tell us. If you walk into any classroom, there are students working with a teacher, but there's also a lot of students sitting at their desk working on homework alone, and there's a lot of students who are out in their music obligation, or maybe practicing for the talent show or something else that goes on in middle school. So to truly gauge the percentage of students at any one time are working on homework versus receiving remediation or reteaching from their teachers is really difficult. We have some teachers in our building who can tell you the exact number of days that a student was absent, and then whenever a student's absent, they meet with a student during 11th period, and that's another piece that was reflected in the survey. Is some parents quite honestly will say, I can't help my child with their homework, and these are, it's not only parents who might struggle in math and reading. Some of our math is difficult, and whenever we have parents coming home saying, I might not be able to help my child with geometry, I might not be able to help my child with some of their algebra. So there is that component as well, and that was reflected in the survey. The big overall piece from the survey is we learned that our families, and I think we all know it at home, for those of us that have younger kids, they're just involved in so many things that they need their school time to not only be direct instruction, but also to have an opportunity to meet with teachers to make up work that they've missed, have an opportunity to catch something that they didn't get in class because they're so busy when they get home, whether it's sports, music, religious activities, whatever it might be.
And special ed progress.
Well, there's also, our special ed department uses 11th period probably as efficiently as anybody because there's constantly students. We won't assign a homeroom to a special education teacher because they will always be available for their students, and there's always students there.
One issue I think that needs to be addressed with 11th period is if a student has a music obligation and if they're in several groups, it ends up being, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week, which is all of their 11th period because they have clubs on Friday. But then, you have the conflict if they need academic help and then they don't feel like they can go get it because they have to go to their music obligation, and there's not enough communication about if a student has an academic issue, are they allowed to miss music? And they get pressure from both ways, and I see that as a big issue that needs to be addressed. And then also because just having a pass to go see the teacher that you need to see, a lot of times the kids feel like they can't go because they don't have the pass ahead of time. And when do they get the pass? Well, because because you got to keep the middle school kids locked down and in their room, right? You don't want them wandering. So I think see that as an issue, and maybe as a way to correct some of the inefficiencies, that there be more of a dialogue about how to get the kids where they need to be to get the help. that they need.
I suspect you may have bugged one of the tables in some of our committee meetings. It's certainly possible. One of the major conversations was this: is it unfair to ask 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students to make a decision? You know, that do I go to my music obligation to this teacher that I feel that is so passionate about what they do and needs me to perform in front of, we have 683 seats in the auditorium at Central, so sometimes we have 720 people at the concert, it feels like, you know, so do I have that pressure there versus my science teacher is so passionate about what she does that really wants to make me up. That push and pull is something we need to address in terms of how do we make 11th period better, assuming if we were to keep 11th period.
No, it's a big issue that I've seen with my, and they don't, you know, if they're trying to follow the rules, they're not allowed to miss music, and they're not allowed to leave the class without a pass, and so if they're trying to follow the rules, they can't get to the teacher that they need help from.
I have a brief question. In the survey, I think it was the teachers that commented that they wanted to see more structure and more efficiency in 11th period. Could you give me a very brief example on how you would structure it to make it more efficient?
You know, that's something that, again, I think we need to meet with teachers to really discuss some of their ideas. Now, in a teacher survey, you know, a teacher typically sees the teacher's perspective on that, what their room looks like, and they might not see holistically how 11th period runs. But our 11th period, students are assigned to their homeroom. They have music obligations up to 4 days a week, and they would then receive a pass from another teacher who would need to see them for academic support. So,
I mean, is it broken down by time?
no, I mean it really isn't, because every
So
kid in the building is different. You know,
It's structured.
there's a structure to it, but it is. Each kid falls into a different category of what they need during 11th period, and to say the exact percentage of students that are not using it perfectly or efficiently is very difficult, but I'm very curious to explore more of teachers' ideas of ways that we can do it better. So I think they would have some great ideas. In some of the comments there were good ideas, in other ways there were ideas that were not possible.
I was just curious how that would look. Thank you.
We did talk about teacher consistencies too.
Yeah.
And we talked about clubs and
Yeah.
different ideas.
There's, just like anything, there's a huge human element to it. Does one classroom to the next manage it the same way? Does one principal to the next manage it the same way? You know, and that's something that we could do better by coming together and talking about it, because we're operating in different places. So the human element's always there.
I don't know if this is the right spot, but, you know, a while back we were talking about getting the students involved in more of those STEM competitions, like the Girls' Day at Girls STEM at Delaware Valley University. And at some point in one of our meetings, that was an idea that came up, that maybe in the 11th period, one of the things that you could do is somehow figure out a way to have more students be involved in that.
Yeah, that was one of the questions on the survey about ranking how they would like to see 11th period used. And one of the questions, or one of the options, was to use that for enrichment or extension opportunities, such as STEM, competitions, et cetera. And both parents and students rated that fairly low. So we did put that out there, and that, I think when we went into it, at least that's what I thought I'd see more of, but it didn't happen to be that way. And with regard to some of the structure, it didn't necessarily deal with the structure of 11th period itself, but more structure and consistency in how teachers managed students getting passes, dialogue between music teachers and classroom teachers. Some teachers spoke and communicated very well with music teachers to work it out if there was a test or a makeup lab, and others didn't. So it was more about how the teachers were managing it than the actual structure of the period.
Thank you.
We haven't talked about gifted class at all and where that fits into the schedule and how, if that would change.
And I don't know, you know, it's something that we haven't expand it on too much because I think the gifted program is under review, as it always might be, and in this schedule, it would land in most of the same places that it does currently, because there's not that much changing in those pieces, so it would land pretty much where it is now.
Option C.
Option C. So we presented option C as well. Now, option C was an option that, when you go through, it does hit many of our goals, and there's a lot of value in the way it does. One thing is it puts music in the schedule. Music in the schedule, by reducing 11th period to approximately half an hour, that would not be enough time for music groups to meet and perform the way they do now on a regular basis. So we would put music into the schedule. We would need to increase music staff, primarily to serve the elementary programs, because many of our music instructors go to the elementary schools as well. And elementaries operate on a 5-day cycle. We operate on a 6-day cycle. And to get the two of them to mesh, 11th period allows that to happen, because we do, although our schedule operates on a 6-day cycle, 11th period operates on a 5-day cycle. It's really driven by that need to share with elementary. So it's driven by the need to share with elementary. So we can say on Monday, this band group meets, on Tuesday this band group meets, and so on. That's how that operates. The music in the schedule, one thing that the music department was very clear about is they think pullouts would still be necessary to do the individual instruction, even though they would have a class that the students would sign up for. And also ensemble groups. To put music in the schedule would be grade level. So to do anything, you'd still need ensemble groups, which would likely need to be EDR after school type things, unless they were going to meet 11th period, which would defeat the purpose of taking them out of 11th period to begin with. 11th period would be reduced time to approximately 30 minutes with transitions, etc. There'll be less seat time. Then it does have an effect on encore. Performance music students would be electing out of family consumer science and art in 8th grade, and electing out of wellness in 6th grade, but also in electing out of general music as well in 6th and 7th grade. That was kind of a given as one thing. When we met with teachers, that was one thing they were very clear about, is if you're electing out of something, music should be it if you're a music student. So they're also electing out of music as well. You're looking at a fairly similar schedule in the way it's structured, but now they're 48-minute classes. And they're 48-minute classes, and that student choice piece is in there. And the choice is a fairly simple choice. B/O/C is band, orchestra, or chorus. So if students were choosing to be in the band, orchestra, or chorus class, they would be missing in 6th grade wellness and music from their encore opportunities. The band, orchestra, and chorus classes would run at the same time, so that students could be in multiple groups, and then the band, orchestra, and chorus teachers would manage how they would work within those groups. Other than that, this operates a little bit different than its A-B cycle. The A-B would allow for the music groups to meet throughout the year and go opposite of health and PE, which can meet throughout the year. But the A-Bs are splitting up those same quarter 45-day courses that they were in the previous schedule. But the big thing is the instructional minutes increase. You get music into the schedule, and the 11th period is reduced to approximately 30 minutes. Again, I don't have that transition time between 9 and 10 on this schedule. We have quite a bit in it currently for announcements and transition, so I think functionally it would be much less than 30 minutes. Okay. Any questions?
What were the negatives to this one?
Well, again, that's an interesting thing. Every time we try to come up with pros and cons, it depends on who we were asking, right? Depending on what they thought was positive and negative about it. The pros to this would be that you're moving music into the schedule, and that's something. We're increasing instructional time, which I think is the next 2 slides away. You're increasing instructional time in any course about 9% over the course of the year, but you're doing it 4 minutes a day. So over the course of time, 9% is pretty good. 4 minutes a day, the efficiency of that could be questioned a little bit as well. You're reducing that 11th period time, which has some positives to it. For some people think it could be a shorter period of time, but by reducing it, you need to get music out. Again, we start that cycle of it. So the negatives are, another negative to it for some people within our committee is that music, honoring how wonderful our music program is and how to keep it that way. The music program, again, still would need to do pull-out lessons, and also would need some means to have ensembles if we wanted multi-grade level groups as well. So you're losing, and honestly the biggest negative from what we learned from the survey is that I don't know that the half an hour to between 30 to 20 minutes, which 11th period would end up functioning like, that's enough time to meet the needs of everybody who responded so passionately to the 11th period survey. I'm sorry. So that's 7th grade. 6th grade, 7th grade is again very similar. We go on an AB cycle again, and that's done just so they can meet throughout the year. Most of the other changes that you'll see are in there. The student choice here is general music currently is and would continue to be a 90-day course, but those students who chose band orchestra course would be electing only out of general music in 7th grade. The way we offer the world language versus the text analysis would have to be a little bit different, again, to accommodate the AB cycle, but in terms of days in class, it would be the same as the previous cycle, or this previous schedule, the way we discussed it. It's again gaining 4 minutes per period equals 9%, and it reduces 11th period. 8th grade, we did not look at 8th grade in B because there were no changes to it. When you look at the changes here in 8th grade, period 3, just the hypothetical period 3 there, STEM 2, we currently have 2 courses that dovetail together 3 days a cycle, which are computer and tech ed. And this, again, the STEM curriculum conversations are taking place within the curriculum department with those teachers now about how we can update that. We also have the student choice piece, which in period 4 is band orchestra course or art or family consumer science. So students who are in the band orchestra course would not be taking art or family consumer science in 8th grade. Everything else is basically the same as we discussed. This just breaks down how the hours work out in minutes, but it all ultimately ends up being, if it's a 180-day course, it's 9%. If it's a 90-day course, it's 9% in addition. If we broke it down by every single course, by encore and so on, you'd find some variations there, but it ends up being 9%.
I wasn't aware that you could opt out of wellness. Isn't that a requirement?
The way that 6th grade wellness would, the 6th grade wellness, the 45-day course would fit in a schedule isolated from they would still have their health and PE class, because they would have a 90-day health and PE class and a 45-day wellness class that would be only classroom-based. So they would be able to opt out of that piece as long as we were meeting. In wellness or any of our encore subjects, we need to provide enough time for students to meet the standards, and we just have to make sure structured that they could. So it could be. You can't opt out of it completely in middle school, but as long as the courses are structured with that as a piece that we'd still meet the standards and the others, we could do that.
So, as I said before, that we plan on meeting with the staff to review the schedules, review the committee's recommendation, and then we respectfully ask to schedule another meeting, hopefully over the summer, so that we can come back and formally make the recommendations. Any questions?
When, so if you make recommendations in the summer, so July or August, I guess, when would this go into effect?
Well, we would use all of next year to do the curriculum rewriting, all of the things that we would need to get in place, look at the 11th period efficiencies or inefficiencies and make those recommendations. So we would have next year to do that. That was the plan, was to hopefully use this year to make a recommendation, use next year to get all of our ducks in a row, make sure that we're prepared, communicate out to staff, parents, and students all the changes, prepare the students for it, hold forums for parents so that they can ask any questions, and then for implementation the following school year.
Is the team time, is that also supposed to double as like professional development time or no? Like I know in the high school we were talking about wanting to include that in the schedule. Is that also something that you're trying to do for, the changes to the 6th grade?
Well, yes, the team time is really for studying students, and you have common students and you're looking at their needs, but you can also use that time clearly for professional development. And I've already asked our curriculum leaders to make that the focus for their goals next year. So that would give us time to work with our teachers on areas that we prioritize. So yes.
just wondered, since you're adding, one of the options is to add exploratory world language. And was there any discussion about Latin, since we offer Latin in the high school and not in 8th grade, about bringing that down? I don't.
Oh, we actually didn't, but.
I don't know. I mean, I just think it's the time to look at that. I don't know.
To be honest, we didn't. We essentially teach Latin in 6th grade. We didn't look at that, but certainly that can be something that we do consider when we're looking at exploratory language. Yes.
Right, because especially, I mean, it's a little bit of Latin in 6th grade, but then you can't, if you decide, well, hey, I like that one, but then you can't take it until 9th grade.
Yeah, I think so.
I actually think that's a wonderful idea, and we will add that
Yeah, just as an item for discussion.
for an item for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right. Item 6, the SEL curriculum development. Mrs. Kulesza?
Hello again. As you know, social and emotional learning has been a key component of what we are trying to advance here in Pennridge. And our goal this year was to take a look and pilot 3 curriculums and then to choose one of those 3 as a K-12 social and emotional learning curriculum. So we had teams across the district at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school, piloting 3 different curriculums, commercial curriculums. One was Too Good for Drugs, Too Good for Violence, Positive Action, and I can't think of the third one right now, I'm drawing a blank. But those were piloted, data was collected, feedback from the teachers, and the driving team met. We reviewed the suggestions and the feedback from the pilot teachers, and it was determined that while some of the programs had some benefit, none of them were appropriate for K-12. And even when you looked at them further, just for an elementary program, a middle school, or a high school program, there were deficiencies in all 3 programs. We also talked about one of our elementary schools had been piloting their own curriculum that they had developed themselves. And all of the feedback that we had been getting regarding that program was very positive. So the driving team discussed, rather than expend a lot of funds for a commercial program that really didn't suit our needs, why don't we take a look at developing our own K-12 Pennridge SEL curriculum? So that's what we decided to do. And we are going to begin that process, although the process has begun already. We are going to spend our trade-off days for middle school and elementary in working on developing that curriculum. So on June 16th of this week, we are going to be having elementary teachers meet from 8 to 11:30 at North Middle School. They're going to be reviewing the curriculum that has been piloted and developed at Guth Elementary. We're going to take a look at whether we want to use those lessons as is, whether we want to differentiate them further by grade level, etc. And we are going to be breaking out into grade level groups and department groups to look at other resources, other instructional activities that can be done within the classroom, that can be done school-wide, and that can be done community-wide as well. In the afternoon, we're going to be gathering the middle school teachers, and I will say that the majority of teachers are coming on the 16th, to also take a look at what we can do for a curriculum for them. Now, they do not have anything in place right now, as we did in one of the elementary schools. So we are going to be taking a look at model lesson plans and then having heterogeneous groups work on developing lesson plans for each of those monthly themes that go with Takes Pride. We are also going to have special ed teachers, music teachers, other encore teachers, guidance, nurses, all professional roles within the middle schools and the elementary schools look at how they can advance those monthly themes within their special areas. We're going to have librarians take a look at what resources are available, what resources we already have in the library, what is available on the internet, and then some additional resources that they might suggest would help support those curriculums. The follow-up trade-off day or the alternative trade-off day in August will be picking up with the progress that was made in June. We expect most of the curriculum will be written on the June day. August will be used to kind of fine-tune things, possibly to consider the kinds of assessments we might add to that. And in the middle school, those lessons would be delivered during special activity period homerooms once a month. In elementary, they would be delivered within the first week of the month, and it would be optional up to the teacher when that would best fit into their daily schedule, since the schedules vary depending on specials, etc. So we're excited about it. The teachers are very happy to be able to create something that works for us in Pennridge, rather than try to take something that's already out there and kind of fit it into what we want to do. So they're excited, and I honestly think that by creating something of our own, it will be much more deeply embraced by teachers and by the students as well. Any questions? Plus, it will save us a lot of money.
So, is the goal that this curriculum will be rolled out next year, or, I mean, in this fall, or the following year?
It will be rolled out in September. We'll be creating a website. I'll be working on that over the summer so that the resources that are created will be accessible from a website, a Google site for our teachers, for our staff. We'll be working on a parent aspect of that as well. So it's going to be a work in progress throughout the year, but the lessons themselves will be ready to be rolled out beginning in September.
And did you say how many lessons per
There are
week
10,
or month?
there are 10 monthly themes, so there will be a formal lesson
Just one lesson
during
for
the
each?
first week of every month. But then the other things that we're going to be doing on the 16th and then again in August is to look at other things that we can be doing throughout the month to reinforce that. So for instance, what can the kindergarten teachers do within that month to reinforce those themes? What can the health PE teachers do within their area to reinforce that? So there will be a universal common lesson that all students will be getting, and then each school, each grade level will kind of be individualizing it as to how to support that throughout the rest of the month.
But then will you need to create new lessons for the following year, or will we be?
Well, it's interesting. That's one of the things we're going to be looking at. In middle school, it will definitely be differentiated by grade level. 6th grade will have their own lessons, 7th grade and 8th grade. The pilot program that's being run in Guth right now, all of the grades do the same lesson, but the way the lessons are structured, it's a lot of discussion and personal reflection. So that will naturally change from year to year based on students' maturity levels and experience. So the very first thing we're doing on Thursday is saying, do we want to follow that structure? It seems to have worked very well this year at Guth. Or do we want to differentiate it more by grade level? But we are going to be looking at, even if they choose to keep it the same for every grade level, we're going to try to build up resources of, while the theme will be the same and maybe the direct instruction part will be the same, what are some other instructional activities or products that students can come up with that will, so there will sort of be a repository of various options that teachers can use. Other questions?
I just wanted to say that Mrs. Kulesza mentioned the driving team. She is one of the 10 members on the team. And when we came up to the conclusion that none of the 3 curriculums were going to work, and I said, well, would anyone like to volunteer to take the lead on what we're going to do? I think Joan sort of raised her hand, like quickly volunteered her, and boy, did she ever take the lead. She has done a tremendous amount of work. But I do also have to thank the other members of this team who have worked for the last several years. Dr. Price is on the team, Dr. Scheid representing the cabinet. We have a principal from every level, Mrs. Sarah Baker, elementary, Mr. Dwayne Renner, middle school, Ms. Gina DeBona for the high school. Mrs. Kulesza represents the elementary supervisors. We have Mrs. Mia Peach represents the secondary, and then we have 2 guidance counselors, from the elementary, Mrs. Cindy Drobick, and from the secondary, Mrs. Shannon O'Sullivan. This coming year, we're going to expand the team and add some more teachers to it. Now that we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the curriculum, we want to get their perspective as well. But big thanks to Joan and the whole driving team. A lot of great work has happened.
And I have to say that we have teachers that are so passionate that they are going to be coming in over the summer to do work on this as well. So I think we have a lot of good things to look forward to, and I'm excited. I think we're all excited about it. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, we had so much good to work with already that it didn't make sense to start from scratch. When we saw what was happening at Guth, we knew that we wanted to emulate that. I mean, they really worked hard on that. So we're excited about that. I did also want to add for the high school that they'll be using Naviance as their tool and an activity period as that venue. And Shannon O'Sullivan and Gina DeBona took the lead on that, and they're continuing to work on that. So the high school will also take part in the whole SEL initiative.
Where does the SEL fit into the scheduling options for the middle school?
It's the activity period.
Oh, okay.
In the middle school, they also have those groups,
Advisory.
advisory groups, right? Do they meet once a month, or?
I think they just, is Mr. Temchatin still there?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they do have those advisories, and they're multi-grade level,
Mhm.
and they do talk about things, so I mean, that's another option of where they could. I don't know.
That's supportive, but we want to make sure that there's formalized lessons. So the homeroom teachers will be delivering those actual lessons, and then the other things that we're going to be developing will be the supporting activities. So the way we're looking at the elementary lessons to be developed is that if we're going to present them with 2 themes as model lessons. One is on trustworthiness and the other is respect. So we're starting with 6th grade at a certain level of trustworthiness. How do you show trustworthiness with parents? How does it look? How it might the way you show respect differ from respect for one of your peers to respect for a teacher, respect for people in the community, etc. So we want to kind of develop those themes so that by the time they're in 8th grade, they're looking at it in a more sophisticated manner than they would be looking at 6th grade. Plus, their experiences are going to be very different from 8th graders, and every lesson will have a self-reflection piece and a goal that all of the students will set. My goal for trustworthiness this year is. So we would expect that to change as students mature as well.
So will there be lessons at the high school, or there'll just be some items on Naviance to give them information?
They broke it out into different sections. They're really looking at college and career readiness as being part of this, and being self-reflective and being able to make decisions. Their lessons won't mirror the lessons that we're writing K to 8. So they are, and they don't have them yet, so I wouldn't be able to share that. But they will be focusing on themes, but they'll be doing that in a different manner. And they are creating a scope and sequence, and they're really having those discussions now. I just wanted to make it clear that it wouldn't look like the K to 8. And as we have that, we'll present it.
And that would be, I guess, during that RAMS block that you're putting in, right? Is that the plan?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I think Joan already mentioned this, but what was the frequency for middle school that you were looking at for this? Once a month?
The formal lesson will be delivered during the first week of every month, and then there will be supporting activities